What's good, everyone? Matt here from UK Nets Fans, and I'm joined, as ever, by Cammy Anderson for another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. Aidan is still away from the team and will be hopefully ramping up to return to team activities soon. But today is Tuesday, the 18th of January, and we're going to be chatting about KD's latest injury, Kyrie Irving doubling down on his vaccination status, some trade talk, as well as recapping games against the Bulls, Thunder, Pelicans, and Cavaliers, and much, much more besides. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets Fans, the pod itself on Twitter at BK2UK Pod, and check us out on YouTube and Twitch, where you can watch all of our episodes back. With that out of the way, let's get into it. And unfortunately, we're starting with some pretty horrible news that no Nets fan wants to see, but as in the Pelicans game, some little knob called Herbert Jones barreled into Bruce Brown at the top of the key. Bruce Brown goes flying and ends up crashing into Kevin Durant, injuring his knee. You can see he kind of tries to walk it off, but goes straight to the bench after about 10 seconds and walks straight into the back. Didn't return to the game. Cammy, what did you make of seeing KD leave the Pelicans game?
Just as things were almost looking all rosy again in Nets land with Kyrie returning, this happens. If you look at what's happened to the Nets in time, Joe Harris has been sidelined. I'm somewhat worried about the impact KD being out will have on this Nets team. On top of also Harris being out, who's still, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, who knows? It's the Nets medical team dealing with this. And obviously upon finding out the news of KD, had taken to Twitter and kind of joked that knowing the Nets medical staff would be lucky to kind of see KD come playoff time. Of course, I hope that's not the case. KD's played arguably the best basketball of his career this year, and without him, it goes without saying we're a far worse team. Seen an absolutely mental stat the other day on the anniversary of Harden's 1 year kind of trade, and it was that since that trade, the Nets have played 113 games. KD, Kai, and Harden have played in just 16 of those together. And yeah, with KD's injury, we're going to have to wait even longer to see this trio that, we were all singing, we're winning the championship, no bother, kind of last January, February time. And it's just been a bit of a nightmare with injuries. Harden's had his fair share. Kyrie's obviously sat out for his reasons. And it's just very, very worrying, the timeline given for KD's 4 to 6 weeks. So that's putting us into nearly March. So it's going to end the season near enough. And I'm just hopeful that Kyrie can obviously step up when he's available. Harden can continue to do what he's been doing. And thankfully, we've had the rookies step up as well. But then I don't think everyone performing even replaces KD. And there's nobody that can replace KD in this Nets team. And we've just got to hope that we can continue picking up wins. It's going to be interesting to see how we get these wins without KD. And then on several nights without Kyrie as well, so it's going to be a lot harder than playing with the rookies. From one perspective, it's maybe good for the rookies, getting lots of game time. From the other, we're probably not getting the results we should. A lot of people will say, well, it's only a seed, and it doesn't matter if you're a good team, you could be the 8th seed and still go all the way. You've seen that with the Lakers a few years ago. Weren't a high seed and still went and won it all. So, also you want to do well in the season, kind of have that bit of momentum. We're obviously in a bit of a rut, still performing rather poorly. Who knows, maybe KD's injury might just break that spell and we start doing well afterwards, but we'll need to wait and see.
Yeah, you're right. We were poised with obviously this huge road trip that we're about to go on. What is it, sort of 13 of the next 15 games being on the road? So we would have had a really, really nice stretch of big three just absolutely dominating. Hopefully, obviously, we saw what happened in that Chicago game that we're going to get onto later. But it would have been absolute poetry to see the big three finally, hit the court together. I saw the same tweet that you referenced with, the 113 Nets games played in the year, and the Nets and the big three playing 16 or whatever it was. But I think it was Matt Brooks pointed out that of those 16, one of those was that weird Toronto game where KD started on the bench for his first time in his career, played, and then got subbed off again. And another one of those games was the first round playoff game where Harden lasted about 2 minutes before he got injured and got off. So really, it's even less than that. So yeah, it's a proper kick in the pants. For those that haven't seen it yet, it's really annoying because the Nets were up 52-27 with 5 minutes to go in the second quarter. So, it's not like it was like a close game and it was back and forth. But as I say, some absolute nobody called Herbert Jones. And I've said before many a time in this podcast that I don't watch many NBA games that aren't Nets games, but I've never heard of this bloke. Just barrels into Bruce Brown. You can see Bruce, as anyone does, when they're falling down, he puts his hands up to brace himself, but puts his hand right into KD's knee and hyperextends it. Nets took KD for an MRI the following day and put out what I thought, I don't know if you thought this was like the most cryptic PR tweet afterwards, saying that Kevin Durant is expected to return to full strength after a period of rehabilitation. So no weeks, no days, no time frame. It's just like he is injured and he will come back one day. It was really strange. But yeah, super rubbish. And as you say, Woj tweeting that there's optimism within the organization that Durant will be able to take the floor again after a 4 to 6 week rehab period, which is horrific. So hopefully he'll come back sooner rather than later. But we all know what this medical team is like. And we shall see. What's up, Talking Nets, in the chat? If you are watching us on YouTube or on Twitch, come through and say hello. And we'll feature your shout outs and your questions. Appreciate you guys joining us. So moving on from KD and getting hurt, another issue that's been causing members of the Big Three to miss out on time has been, obviously, Kyrie Irving taking the decision not to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Recently, in the game, I think it was after the Cavs game, Kyrie spoke to the media, and I'm not sure which reporter it was, but they asked him about his vaccination status and whether or not that would change. And Kyrie got annoyed and said, why'd you keep asking me that, bro? Obviously, this is coming from the guy that kept stonewalling questions, saying, please respect my privacy, things of that nature. And, Cammy and I were chatting sort of off pod, saying it's a weird position to be in, to be like, he should obviously get vaccinated for the good of humanity and for his health and people around him's health and stuff. But you can also understand the fact that he ain't going to change his mind, man, and stop pestering him about it because he's just going to cheese him off. But Cammy, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely raging at that reporter. He was, I think, probably 30 seconds away from square going him. Obviously disappointing from a basketball perspective to hear that he's not going to be changing his mind. Obviously, selfishly, I want to see him play, but it's completely understandable from a personal perspective. He's, as we've always said, he's entirely entitled to his own kind of views, opinions, decisions, and whether we agree with it or not, we've just got to respect it. As frustrating as it is, like we say, the reporter kept kind of pushing him, and Kyrie, although you could tell he was getting agitated, I think he done quite well not to just get a wee bit angry and maybe throw a few words out that he maybe wouldn't have wanted to, being the peaceful guy that he is. It's difficult because I was kind of hoping that KD's injury might have made Kyrie go, I'll come up, I'll step up and be the saviour, and especially if I'm having played a few games lately, I haven't done well. I was kind of really hoping that he'd go, this is good. I think you'd mentioned that last week or the week before, that he maybe gets that feel for basketball again. It's like, this is it. This is what I want to do. But as he kind of said in the interview, I've made my decision and I'm kind of standing on it. Fair enough. He says, I've kind of been away from it long enough. He's kind of used to that. And if that's the way he kind of wants to live his life, then we can only really enjoy Kyrie on a part-time basis, which is a real shame. It was interesting the way he reacted to the comment from the reporter who said, you're one of the most famous people in the States without the vaccine. And Kyrie just, he reacted to that one a bit weirdly, because to downplay that, just, I can't remember his exact words, but it was like, fame's just a social concept or whatever. And it's like, come on, just, you're one of the most known basketball players. You're making mega bucks. Don't just play this down. Like, just say, right, yeah, I appreciate that. And like you said, there's other people as well. Obviously, we're only kind of zoned into the basketball world, but there's without doubt some very, very powerful, famous people in the US who are unvaccinated, and I've certainly not seen as much media attention towards them. But yeah, it's just one of those things. The Kyrie vax saga looks set to roll on even longer, and we've just got to deal with it.
Yeah, it's one of those. I keep saying to people that ask me what the crack is with Kyrie's vaccination status, and again, I think that everyone should get vaccinated. But the way he's gone about taking the decision not to be vaccinated, you can't argue with. As someone that, respectfully holds a different opinion from you, he's just minded his own business. He hasn't said anything disparaging. He's said that he's not anti-vax. He's just been quietly getting on with his life, taking the fines, not being able to participate in all these kind of things, wearing a mask, all this kind of stuff. So I think, I think it does. I think it's because it was in Cleveland as well. Maybe there's a certain element of the media that are a bit anti-Kyrie because of his history there. But I think there's a certain type of reporter that keeps banging on to Kyrie about vaccination. And it's people that want to write sort of pessimistic column inches about him and really keep dragging that up instead of talking about the basketball. Because, we all know that's what Kyrie wants to talk about the whole time. And you got kind of begrudgingly or not, you've got to respect him for that. I'm exactly the same as you, where I hoped against hope that all of a sudden him being around the team and playing basketball again, he gets bitten by the bug. It's probably a bad analogy to use, but he probably gets the love of basketball back, and he's like, maybe it's worth parking my pride for it and just getting the vax so I can do this. But he's not going to ever. Mark my words, Kyrie Irving will not get vaccinated. And he said before, like, he's doing it for the people that have been, fired or denied work because they didn't want to have a vaccine, which is another thing that made me think, I think we spoke last week about the Nets potentially being able to pay a fine to get Kyrie to play at home, and how much of a PR disaster that would be. As much as, they want to win a championship, so they'll do whatever it takes. That would be an absolute PR disaster, I think, if they did just pay a fine so he could do it. So it's, really is one rule for the rich and famous and people with means to pay fines, and another rule for those guys that haven't. I think that decision would go over terribly with Kyrie, because he's been, this social justice warrior who's, standing up for the little guy. But yeah, please, I know that obviously loads of NBA reporters will be listening to this and watching along live as we record, but please stop asking Kyrie these questions. Let's just focus on basketball. The dude's not going to get vaxxed. He's going to follow all the rules you want him to follow. So I think it's fine. Just move on, I think. But from one annoying story that won't go away to another, we saw resurface a report about James Harden potentially being open to a move away from Brooklyn, as per Mark Stein. I believe you've got it sort of there with you, Cammy.
Yeah, I mean, if what is said within this article is true, this is going to be my big, wow, why is he saying that kind of moment? Harden being open to relocation this summer, if that's true, get him away pronto. That is a wild thing to say when we've got KD out for X amount of weeks. We've got Kyrie playing part-time, but let's not forget, Harden's been offered a new deal with us. He's turned that down. He's got a player option at the end of the season, and if he's not interested in the option if he's not interested in the contract we're already offering him, who's to say he's going to be interested in triggering that player option to remain? If he's open to relocating, he's clearly had some interest from somewhere. You don't just openly want to relocate. There's always a factor there for me. No smoke without fire and all that. Yeah, it's a scary thought that he could leave us kind of high and dry 18 months on from us trading for him, and leave us with KD and a part-time Kyrie. Granted, we'd probably get a star in return, but like what we said earlier, we've been robbed of seeing one of the potentially the best ever NBA trios but ultimately it's going to go down as a what if this actually happens, because I mean, I personally can't see them playing any more than, say, 20 games together by the end of now, well, starting now to the end of the season, no matter how far we go in the playoffs. I just can't see it, given the injuries and everything else that's going on. When you think we gave up Caris LeVert and Jarrett Allen, 2 young players we brought in, built up, and obviously Jarrett Allen's now starting in the league and rightfully gaining plaudits, it's a really tough one to take. I think a year ago, if we were told, right, you're getting James Harden for 18 months, that's it, anyone would have bitten your hand off. It was James Harden. But then if you were told it was going to be in this fashion, you'd maybe have reservations about it. Like I said, we've barely got to see the star trio together, and I'm just certainly curious to know why Harden's open to the relocation after being so... Yeah, he just had to do a lot to get here in the first place. Obviously, the famous kind of what appeared to be a fat suit that he was putting on in games just so he could maybe suggest he wasn't fit and force his way out. And yeah, it's just one of those things, like, what if we hadn't traded for James Harden? There's so many what ifs. Would Jarrett Allen have turned into the player he has now? Would our centre issues have been resolved? Caris LeVert, well, we wouldn't have needed, well, we've got Harden, but Caris LeVert would have been there. Would he have kicked on kind of as we expected? Obviously, like we pointed out at the time, that trade was potentially life-saving for Caris. So in that regard, I don't think I'd change it for that reason. But it's just, you think we could have locked Caris and Jarrett Allen up for probably the same money it would be for James Harden for a year. And yeah, it's just we're a team that often relies on the stars. We've got depth, but there's maybe some guys on this team who you're like, right, we could have maybe done with just on an extra million here or there, and we could have just upgraded him a wee bit. And yeah, it's one of those things, like we kind of said off the pod, it's probably nonsense. Maybe just, is it Daryl Morey at the Sixers? I think he'd worked with Harden at the Rockets, so there's also that relationship there. I think it's clear that the Sixers are wanting to move on from Ben Simmons, and they've got to maybe plant some information. So if they can maybe plant, James Harden wants away, we could maybe trade for James Harden. And then it maybe puts other teams and all that and goes, well, if they're trading James Harden and getting Ben Simmons, well, what could we offer? Could we do better? And they're maybe talking to another team. And this is maybe just we'll say the Nets are interested. They're not. But if we say they will, this team might give up an extra pick. And I mean, sometimes that's all it takes. I know certainly from playing 2K, which is definitely not comparable at all. You're sitting there trying to do trades on the kind of hard difficulty, and you're like, right, throw that. And like, nah. Then you throw in a random pick, and like, that's great, mate. And it's like, whether that's the difference, I don't know. Obviously, I think we'll come to see that soon. I just hope things don't turn ugly, because we could really do without that happening.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely smashed it with that response, hit nail on the head. I think it's just other teams namely Philly, trying to move off Ben Simmons, because I think there was also something else that Simmons said he's going to sit the rest of the season if he doesn't get traded in this little window. And we all know that Daryl Morey's trying to get a sort of reunion with James Harden. So yeah, if there's some sort of weird 3-team trade that sees James Harden move and Ben Simmons not land on the Nets for some reason, I don't see it. I mean, there was a lot. I was just trying to find the numbers as you were talking then, but everyone knows that if James Harden signed in or opted into his player option this year, it was a ton of money. But if he opts in next year, it's 2 tons of money. Like instead, like and I think that was just put to bed and just as sort of a foregone conclusion. And James Harden said at the beginning of the season, when he was asked these questions, he was like, look, I don't see myself going anywhere other than Brooklyn. So like you say, I think it's all smoke and mirrors. I think it's just waffle that, I'm yet to really nail down this sort of area of NBA fandom about leaks and putting information out there. And there are some reporters that are pally with organizations and some organizations that are more pally with players. So I've still got to get my head around that fully, but I think it's just one of those. It's just trying to cause upset, trying to break this Nets team up. And I don't think it's going to happen. However, one way that it could happen is that we develop really good players, and because we've got the big three, we can't really afford to pay them their market value, which brings us quite nicely on to Nick Claxton. Obviously, there was a Real GM article that was going around about our boy Clax, saying that the Nets are potentially looking to move him. Obviously, I think he's made a nice leap this season. Obviously, started the season off ill and not looking great, but since he's come back, he's been looking incredible. What do you think about potentially moving Nick Claxton?
Clax, like you say, he's come back into the team after his bout of illness and done well, and kind of made that step we were all kind of hoping he'd make maybe last season, and kind of ahead of this season we were saying this is going to be the season. He's had some really impressive moments. Obviously, most recently that dunk on LeBron that went kind of viral, and everyone's seen it, and he really kind of put his name on the map when he done that. So perhaps the Nets are thinking of trying to strike whilst iron's hot. People have got their attention on Claxton. He's doing quite well. I can kind of understand why the Nets would be exploring their options. He's an upcoming free agent, and second of all, he's been plagued by injury and illness during his time with the team. Yes, he's arguably the most high potential player on this team. He's got a really high ceiling, and I don't think there's any disputing that. Whether he can actually maintain fitness over a prolonged period of time, it's up in the air. I can't remember if it was you or Aiden said a while ago when a player got injured, the best ability is availability, and if Clax can't kind of guarantee that, the Nets have maybe some concerns over his long-term fitness or what have you. Yeah, I can maybe see why, like you say, when we're paying the big free, big money, you're going to need to make sacrifices somewhere. Obviously, Jarrett Allen and Karis LeVert went. Could we have paid them? Yeah, we don't really know. But Clax, he's also going to be on much less money than the pair of them, but you'd still think he'd fancy a little bit. There's going to be a lot of potential suitors kind of sniffing around. And also wonder if Daron Sharp's emergence has had anything to do with the Nets maybe having what you can maybe say was second thoughts about Clax. Daron Sharp's also a rookie on pennies in comparison to what Clax would then need to be paid should we go on to pay him. Whilst he's doing well and getting noticed, it's certainly worth putting the feelers out and seeing what you can maybe get for him, trying to flip him for something rather than avoid him going for nothing in free agency. You've spent 2-3 years investing in this guy, trying to progress him, all to lose him for nothing. At least if you can get a bit of a return, doesn't feel as bad. But yeah, I'm going to be honest, I can't see us paying him. I think the focus will be keep Harden. If there's obviously the concerns about relocation, we might up that offer that little bit more to make sure we can keep these free, or it's a case of Harden walks and we've got to really restructure this team. And if you lose a player like Harden, that's a lot of money to play with. And yeah, there's a lot more movement, and you can maybe get a player more ready than Clax is at the moment, and who could help us win championships now rather than in a few years' time. As much as we've got an exciting kind of rookie kind of core, if you like. But yeah, I'm keen to see what happens. There's lots of promising young players in this league who'd certainly have suitors, and Clax will definitely be one of them. So yeah, unlike the kind of James Harden ones, which is nonsense, I think there's maybe something a bit more to this.
Yeah, I think so. We're, like you say, it's where we're kind of maxed out with the cap, then Sean Marks has got to be a little bit more creative about getting a return for anything. And, we've seen that with pretty much every trade. I think we've, had a decent return. I don't think we've ever been absolutely, battered by a trade, even with how much we gave up for James Harden. I still think, you got an opportunity to get a former MVP on this team, and unfortunately that is worth Karis LeVert and Jarrett Allen and a war chest of picks. But yeah, it would be, like you say, it would be an annoying state of affairs to be investing in these kinds of players and then not being able to give them a decent starting salary, because if we did trade him, we would need a starter caliber player back, I think, because Nick Claxton's definitely played his way this season into contention for a starting role. So yeah, well, I guess if it does happen, we'll have to reserve judgment to see him whatever Marks gets back. But as ever, we'll trust in Marks and what he has. But yeah, that's enough. And it's one of those, you can never guess. You can never be sure about what we're going to do, and we'll definitely discuss it if something happens. But it's fruitless trying to predict sometimes. But we're here for it. So that's enough goss for this week. That's enough news. That's enough gossip. The Nets played some basketball games, and we're going to start off with a fantastic game. I think we'll all agree as Nets fans, and that was a huge win in Chi-Town. The Nets beating the Bulls 138 to 112. The top of the East, flying high. Obviously, huge season the Bulls are having. And I think the main thing that grabbed me after this one was just the scoreline. To put 138 points on this Bulls team is incredible. It was the most points scored by the Nets in Chicago in franchise history, and the most this season. KD's 12th straight game with 25 plus points. And KD rested the whole fourth quarter in this game, which is unheard of. He played like 30 minutes. That's basically having a game off. It almost kind of always reminds me of that Warriors model where they just batter you for three quarters and then rest their stars, which is a great way to be able to do it. But, Patty Mills scoring 21 points, 7 of 10 shooting, 6 of 8 from deep in 22 minutes. Nice to get a big win on the board, like a convincing, like a blowout win. Doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game that I think both of us had reservations about. We were obviously not great against in either of our previous games against the Bulls, getting beat by them, and like you say, that they're kind of flying high at the top of the East. So it was always going to be a tough one, and I don't think anyone could have expected us to absolutely demolish them. And with there being so many positives from this one, that there really weren't many negatives to choose from. And I'm perhaps being a little harsh here in saying that the negative for me was the performance of Kyrie. Kyrie obviously came back. 22 points, and then 9 points in this one. 9 points in 24 minutes, shot just 40%, which was the lowest among all starters. I was really looking forward to see Kai building on his kind of first two performances of the season. He kind of come back like nothing had happened, like he hadn't been away, similar to what happened with KD. But Kyrie, he just completely dropped off, and it's a little bit worrying. I can understand he's still ramping up. He's been away a while, and the first two games were maybe just this is me completely letting myself go. This is me. This is months and months of vent up kind of basketball anger just coming out. But just a poor night from Kyrie. Thankfully, it didn't affect us. We still managed to run away with it. And I mean, we're going to see a few of these games from Kyrie in the coming weeks. I think obviously still finds his feet. Obviously, the fact we've got, like you say, that there are lots of road games coming up, that's surely going to be good for Kyrie. He'll be able to kind of get into his groove, and it'll be really good because with KD out, we need Kyrie to perform. So hopefully this was just a little bump in the road. We see Kyrie perform really well on the road, and then let's just hope that when it comes to us having a stretch at home, it doesn't affect Kyrie, who then maybe need to miss 3, 4, 5 games. And then he's kind of back resetted, because there's nothing like kind of match fitness and that what you gain from actually playing in the matches. So it's certainly something to keep an eye on. But even then, I think I'm still being kind of harsh on Kyrie, because he's only just back in the door. So I'll cut him some slack. But maybe expected a bit more from him after his first showings.
No, it's one of those, like, expectations are always huge with Kyrie Irving, aren't they? Because he's just so incredibly talented. But I just wanted to say, like, is this proof that we can win against good teams? Because obviously it's been a good little story that's been bubbling this season, that the Nets can beat up on the not so good teams, but don't win against the good teams. But I think this game showed that fully healthy, or with a fully healthy and present big three, we can batter absolutely anyone. And, with Kyrie coming in and Patty going off, you could just see the spacing that was there on, for everyone else to operate in. You got just opening the paint up, opening the lane for KD and Harden just to go nuts in the paint. or drop it off to the bigs. It was just like, as soon as this team gets some space in, and as soon as we have the roster that we thought we were coming into the season with, then we're borderline unplayable. Even if Kyrie does only score 9 points, we can still just go absolutely nutty on you. Yeah, like you say, KD 27 points, 9 assists. James Harden 25 points, 16 assists, 8 from the free throw line, 5 of 8 from free. Day'Ron Sharpe with a career high 20 points, 7 rebounds. Patty Mills with that 21 off the bench, like I say. It was just a complete game. Worth staying up till 3 a.m. if that's what you would like to do with UK time. But yeah, real good game. I think. Yeah, just nice. However, going on to the not so nice, playing against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and from all that waxing lyrical I've said about winning big games and losing, against the worst teams, I'm just trying to pull up what record the Oklahoma City Thunder had at the time, but we didn't just get beat on that game. We got absolutely annihilated. I'm just pulling it up for him. 109 to 130 at home. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going off for 33. Lou Dort getting 27. Josh Giddey, the kid, going off for 19. They had, 5 players in double digits. Another one had 9 points. It was just a complete and utter collapse. I'm begging you give us some positives, Cammy. But yeah, it was a bit of a stinker.
Yeah, it was. Thankfully, there were some positives, even though they didn't result in us winning, and that was the performances of Cam Thomas and David Duke Jr. In the absence of KD, Patty Mills, and Kyrie, it was hard and stern to play for the rookies, and just like the rookies did against the Raptors with KD, the rookies stepped up in this one. Both Thomas and David Duke Jr. made solid contributions in 33 and 20 minutes, respectively. Cam tied his career high of 21 points. DDJR scored 13, 9 of which came from deep, so that was also nice to see that. 5 rebounds and an assist as well. And although we came out on the losing end, this was a good game to let these guys kind of play a fair chunk of, especially in Cam's case, a fair chunk of minutes, considering the Thunder, although they beat us, aren't exactly great. They're a young, inexperienced team, and it's maybe easier for the likes of Cam Thomas, David Duke, Day'Ron Sharpe, Kessler Edwards to come into these situations because they're up with OKC having about 90,000 picks. They've always got young talent there, so it's maybe easier for younger guys to show off against them because they're against the guys who played in college the year or two before, so they're kind of at a similar level in development. So I think that's obviously a bonus for them. With KD out for a while, I think we're going to need to see more of this from our young stars, not want to put too much pressure on their shoulders. They've obviously delivered in recent weeks, and it's been a delight to see. I certainly think we're about to see an expanded role for Cam Thomas in this offence, not just because KD's out, but obviously Kyrie's still going to be part-time, so we're going to see a lot of Killer Cam doing his thing, and hopefully he can better that career high in next to no time.
Yeah, just looking at the box score, and it's great to see Cam going off for 21, but 1 of 7 from 3-point land.
I'm being positive. You're not allowed to mention that.
Oh, sorry. I just thought that Basketball Reference was on the fritz because it was 14.3% from 3, which is rare you see something that bad. But you're quite right. Let's get back on the positive. But unfortunately, that means we're going to have to go back onto the Pelicans game. We're going to move swiftly on to another game, and another great game for the rookies, including Cam Thomas with what was his 3rd straight game with 20 points or more. Day'Ron Sharpe, another double-double, 12 points and 10 rebounds, and Kessler Edwards, who I think we've given him a little time on the pod just to say how good he is and what really he brings this Nets team. But 16.6 rebounds, 4 of 5 from 3, and just a really, really solid pickup. We've said before, with the Nets have got just no draft picks for the foreseeable future, so it feels like Sean Marks has got 4 first decent sort of rookie prospects in one draft, and they all came to play against this Pelicans team. What did you see that was not quite so good in this Pelicans game?
I mean, the obvious negative, and one that you can't really look over, is KD's injury. Obviously, we discussed that in length at the kind of start of the show. And yeah, it's really difficult to pinpoint another obvious negative, seen as the team done so well and obliterated the Pelicans. The rookies, like you say, continue to perform well. Harden had a good game. So yeah, I'll say Bruce Brown, yes, like we said, Herbert Jones kind of shoved him, but Bruce Brown was in the way. If he wasn't in the way, he wouldn't have got shoved. KD wouldn't have got injured. It's a stretch for a negative, but like I say, when everyone was so positive, you've kind of got to make these stretches. And unfortunately for us, the only meaningful thing that Bruce has done this year is a negative and injuring the star man on the team. In the past few days, I've seen a lot of tweets going about that he became eligible to be traded. And with him far from in favour, I wouldn't be surprised to see him traded before the deadline. I mean, I don't think KD is going to be that salty, but I mean, you know the power kind of KD has in this organisation. If he's really raging about getting injured, he might go, yeah, get him traded, bag of peanuts, whatever, just get him away, out my sight, because he's ruined my kind of amazing year, my kind of MVP chances, because he was in the way and got shoved or whatever. But of course, I'm only joking. I hope Bruce is going to get back in form, because he was a big favourite last season particularly, but just hasn't, kind of suffering from second season syndrome at the Nets. And yeah, if he's traded, I wouldn't be too surprised, but it would be a shame, because he's a player who brings a lot to this team, but he's kind of been replaced in that regard by DeAndre Bembry.
I was just going to say they've just got a sort of just another Bruce Brown mold of a guy in DeAndre Bembry, who weirdly played 17 and a half minutes, had one field goal attempt, didn't make it, but was still a plus 16 on the plus minus. So very strange, a steal, a block, a couple of assists, couple of rebounds, and that's what you want from DeAndre Bembry, and that's the kind of stuff that Bruce Brown was doing last year, as you rightly say. It's like he just seems to have lost a bit, hasn't he? I think whether it's that we're playing a different style, or he's obviously he benefits from having room to cut to the basket. He did that a lot last year, and obviously with the lack of spacing that we have at the moment, maybe that's sort of a contributing factor. But yeah, it's a bit weird to see Bruce really, really take a nosedive. And yeah, as you quite rightly say, he is eligible for trade, and where we're trying to scrimp and save wherever we can, I can see him being offered out. And I think there's going to be a lot of other teams that could use a Bruce Brown. So unfortunately, he might be one for the chopping block. But we shall see. And then lastly brings us on to the game against the Cavs, which, good news, bad news. If you're in the UK, this Cavs game tipped off at 8 p.m., which was absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, that means that we were up enough to see the Nets lose this one, 107-114. And give us some positives first on this one, Cammy.
The positive is Kyrie being back to his best. Obviously, earlier on, I was slating Kyrie for his poor performance, but in this one, we saw the Kyrie Irving we all know and love again. 27 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists on the night. Unfortunately, not enough to help us to victory, but he was really, really solid. Had some really nice moments. Had a really nice kind of behind-the-back pass to Kessler Edwards, who we also sang the praises of. Had a few tidy drives to the basket where it was just kind of ones where he was running at Markkanen or Jarrett Allen or the pair of them, and he'd somehow managed to contort himself around. And there was a nice one where he put a left-handed kind of layup, kind of floatery kind of thing past the pair of them, and it was just, yeah, that's Kyrie in a nutshell, just pulling off those plays that shouldn't be possible for a guy of his size, especially against guys of that size. He was just a generally positive influence on the court. He was actually the only net of a positive plus-minus in the double figures. And, I mean, for large spells, he kept us in the game. We were sitting kind of neck and neck for a good while, and then just kind of right at the end, just kind of collapsed. And whether that was due to just the amount of games we've played lately, I don't know. I think that was always probably going to be the case, that we'd have a bit of a slump. The players were going to be knackered, especially with injuries. Some guys need to play even longer because of other injuries and that have kind of come up. But But yeah, obviously fantastic to see Kyrie back, and kind of like what I'd said, this is the Kyrie we kind of need, and if he can continue doing this on his road games, then we're going to be absolutely delighted that he can keep this up. What are you thinking in terms of negatives then?
It was just that fourth quarter collapse for me. I've got a weird positive and negative, which is LaMarcus Aldridge. I think he played incredibly well for 3 quarters, and then not to pin it on him, because as you were saying, there was some tired legs out there, but he had a couple of chances to really ice this game out. I think it got really, really close towards the end there, and for a guy that has been absolutely automatic, as Iron Eagle like to say, he just fluffed it. Like from that mid range, I mean, the Nets as a whole in that fourth quarter only made 6 field goals, which speaks to just how off the offense was. Annoyingly, God bless James Harden for getting to the line 6 times and scoring all 6 free throws at that. But that's all the points he made. LaMarcus himself scored 7 points in that fourth quarter, but as I say, he went 3 of 7 in that fourth quarter and just kind of missed some real opportunities that would have kept the wolf from the door, so to speak. And there was just a couple of sort of late game missed passes and stuff like that, and just some wide open sort of opportunities for Cleveland. But so yeah, it was, as much as Cleveland are a good team this season, so it's not a bad loss in that sort of way of thinking about it. It's an annoying loss, just in the manner we did it, because we were in there all the way, which was, we were all up in the Discord talking about, even though it's a tough matchup, we're still in this, and we've got people out and all this kind of stuff. It was just a bit, the manner of the loss was just a bit frustrating for me. So yeah, tricky one to square away, unfortunately. But yeah, so that'll do us for this week. I'm just having a look at our win-loss record, and over the last 9 games, we've gone win-loss, 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 win-loss. So I would love a run of form. I would love a nice little win streak. Would go down an absolute treat at the moment. But as you quite rightly say, we are on the road again. So that starts with, let me get the banners up here. That starts us with Thursday. So a couple of days' time at midnight at Washington, before heading to San Antonio on Saturday at 1:30 a.m. to play the Spurs. And then another day off before, on Monday, the 24th of Jan, 1 a.m., we travel to Minnesota to see Nets legend D'Angelo Russell and his Minnesota Timberwolves. How do you see this one going?
In theory, this should be a rather straightforward week, given none of the teams are particularly brilliant. But in practice, it's likely to turn out rather different. I think our success on this road trip really depends on Kyrie balling out and being able to consistently do that, and hopefully he stays injury-free and other guys stay injury-free as well. With KD out for the foreseeable, we really need Kai to step up and get us these wins on the road, given that wins at the Clays will be that bit harder, considering we'll be without KD as well, on top of Kai. So yeah, and that's not even factoring in the fact James Harden's probably going to need a rest at some point as well if he's playing all the home games. So yeah, if we can get wins on the road when we've got Kyrie and Harden both there, brilliant. That's maybe a kind of tactic we try and approach and just make ourselves difficult to be at home, and hopefully can get some wins regardless of the kind of odds being stacked against us in a sense. Despite our continued bad form, I'm going to remain optimistic about this team. The table's going to turn at some point. I'm going to say we'll go 2-1. I think we'll lose to the Wizards before getting back-to-back wins over the Spurs and T-Wolves, and then going on a bit of a run. We've beaten all 3 of these sides already this term, but seeing if we played the Wizards right at the start, it was our 3rd or 4th game. I think this one's a little harder to gauge, so I'm going to say a loss, considering a lot has certainly changed since October 25th when we faced them and beat them 104-90. Yeah, I mean, the wins over the Spurs and T-Wolves were a lot more recent. We can kind of gauge a little bit more from them, whereas the Wizards, don't think can really gauge anything from the first week or so of the season when it's just teams trying stuff out. Rosters have changed a lot. Of course, it'd be fantastic if we managed to go 3-0, but yeah, I've just got some reservations about that Wizards game. I still can remember the games from last season or the season before where we struggled with them. And although we've kind of traded wins and losses with them for the past season and a half, it just seems to be those losses that stick with me. We've had some pretty honking performances against the Wizards, and yeah, I just kind of get concerned when we face them. As worrying as that sounds, considering they're not a very good team.
No, I know what you mean. It's just those bogey teams, those banana peel teams, and yeah, the Wizards have certainly been one of those. But I'm gonna hit us with some optimism. Obviously, early on in the season, the Wizards were they got off to a 6-1 start or something ridiculous. Those days are well and truly over. They're still in 8th. They got they're above 500. They're 23-21 as we record. But I'm going to say we're going to start rolling. Did KD or not? I think that the Harden, Kyrie, and the young guns are going to be back with a vengeance. Hopefully, we'll get Claxton back as well. He was questionable against the Cavs, but obviously didn't play. So hopefully he comes back soon. I haven't seen a date on when Joe Harris is going to return, but that's got to be soon. So, if he comes, in this week, that's really going to help us. And then, so we've got San Antonio, who are having a real tough time at the moment, 16-28, sitting 12th in the West. And then, Minnesota are sitting in 9th at 21-22, a shade under 500. But I'm going to say this is where the Nets make a stand. We're going to do it for Kevin and really put a run of form together. And then it's going to be one of those where Kev will get sort of healthy again, and then will be, for some reason, something else will come up against us and we won't be able to get all three on the court. But yeah, I think barring any trades or any moves, I think we're going to have a good week. We're going to have a lovely week. Kyrie's getting nice and healthy. Harden's playing like himself again. The new big four, the young four, the core four, whatever you want to call them, the baby Nets are killing it. LaMarcus Aldridge is looking decent. Patty Mills has found his shooting stroke again. Clax is back, and yeah, 3-0. I'm calling it. Putting my pinning my colours to the mast. But yeah, as ever, if you are listening to this, do let us know what you think. And we shall see. Time will tell. Obviously, we're going to keep. We're going to return to the BK to UK Pick'em when Aiden is back from gallivanting around the States. Wearing a Memphis Grizzlies jersey, Cammy. How do you feel about Aiden cheating on this Nets team wearing a Ja Morant jersey?
Well, you've maybe not seen the most recent one where he's also got the Orlando Magic jersey on. So
brutal. Absolutely brutal.
To be fair, I can't fault him for the Grizzlies jersey. It's an absolute belter of a jersey. I'd went for it as well. His fingers were quicker. But yeah, it's an absolutely lovely jersey. You can't knock that, even if it's another team. It is an absolutely stunning jersey.
Good man. Yeah, to be fair, it's a very, very tasty jersey. And Ja Morant as well. What a season that guy's having. But yes, hopefully when we come in your ear rolls next, we will be back to a big three. And yeah, that's us. Thanks for Cammy for joining me. If you like what we do, the best way you can help us is to like, rate, review the podcast, subscribe to us on YouTube, where we're still really, really close to 100 subs. And that is a nice little milestone for us to be having over there on YouTube. You can support us by treating yourself to some merch as well. You'll find a link in our Twitter bio. But until next time, we'll see you next week for another episode, and take it easy.